All right, so today we are bringing you a review of the Resco Hooper automatic watch. Resco Instrument Company is a watch company based out of Coronado, California that builds watches using Swiss movements and what I would describe as typically bomb-proof cases. The founder and proprietor is a former Navy SEAL, and so I would say that adds a little bit of panache to this company. In terms of that bomb-proof case, the Resco Hooper is just as tough, I would say, as any of the other Resco watches, but it has a little bit of a departure from the sort of tank aesthetic that you see in some of the other Resco watches. A lot of nice details on this watch. We have a stainless steel case with a coin edge bezel. The material used on the bezel is, to my eye, possibly ceramic. I do not believe it is aluminum, but I could be wrong on that. I know it's held up very well. I've been wearing this watch almost every day for about 4 months. And it gets banged around a lot of my wrist. I've been clearing brush with a chainsaw, dragging it and burning it, and I've had this watch completely soaked. I've had the strap completely soaked, the watch, submerged it, as I said, bashed it into things. I've actually done quite a bit of shooting with this watch, so it's been subject to quite a bit of recoil, and I haven't had any problems with the watch. As I mentioned, there's some nice details here. The case is actually sloped and chamfered, polished in some surfaces and left unpolished somewhat in others. We have this nice trident detail on the screw down crown, which I will say is one of the better screw down crowns I've worked with. It unscrews and rescrews quite easily without you feeling like you're about to strip it. The face is a flat black face with a BWG9 Super Luminova. I will say this watch has some of the best Loom I've seen, and it's right up there with some of the higher end watches. I used to have an Omega Seamaster Professional, Planet Ocean. Should have kept it, but you know how things are. We sell, we buy, we trade. I don't have that watch anymore, but I'd say this one is right up there with that $5,000 Omega in terms of quality of the Loom. We do have a slight dome to the sapphire crystal here, and there is a single anti-reflective coating on the inside of the crystal. We have 20 millimeter spring bars. We have approximately 13 millimeters in thickness and a 40 millimeter diameter. Now, when you hear 40 millimeter diameter, you may think this watch is going to wear small. It doesn't. It actually wears, I would say, pretty ideal for my roughly 7-inch wrists. It is pretty much exactly 40 millimeters on the bezel. And then it jumps up to about 44 millimeters to the crown. Make sure you can read that there. And then lug to lug, you're looking at a very manageable 46, get that where you can read it, 46 millimeters. And again, the case itself, like I said, is slightly curved. The lugs actually drop down so that they're actually level with the case back at the point where the strap leaves the watch. So it does wear very comfortably. This is a unidirectional bezel. It only turns counterclockwise. It's a 120 click bezel, very positive to tense. And I have not had any issues with this bezel moving when I don't want it to move. And you can use this bezel for a number of things. You can use this as a timer to measure elapsed time. I personally just leave it in the 12 o'clock position for aesthetics most of the time, but once in a while when I'm timing something, I do use this. If I want to do a 15-minute timer, I simply align the 12 o'clock point with the minute hand, which actually happens to be at 12 o'clock right now. And when it reaches 15, that's my 15-minute timer. It's difficult to see, but there are hour markings at every hour beneath the minute markings. So you could sort of use this as a second time zone, but in my opinion, as a world traveler, not very effectively. If I'm going to do a second time zone, I prefer an actual GMT hand, because I would be having to convert in my head AM and PM with just the 12-hour markings on this bezel. The Resco Hooper, I did mention, is a little bit of a departure from the sort of tank look of some of the other Resco watches. This is another Resco that I've had for probably about 3 years. The bezel or the crystal a little polish here. This one does have a GMT function, and of course the GMT hand is sitting there close to 2400 at this point. I'm actually tracking a time zone in another country where I have some work happening with this watch. I haven't worn it a lot on this band. This is not the band it came on, but you can see the difference in sort of the aesthetic here. Very muscular, heavy, thick, large diameter. This one actually has screw-in lug bars instead of the spring bars that the Hooper has. So a little bit of a departure in aesthetic for Resco with the Hooper versus some of their other models, including this RTAC, which I love, by the way. This is actually, I won't say an homage. That would be, I think, inaccurate. This is, I would say, a sort of recreation of the Alsta watch worn by the character Hooper in the Jaws movie. If you watch that movie, pay attention to what's on his wrist, and you'll see a lot of similarities to the Hooper here. The Hooper is unique in its own way, and it's a larger case than the Alsta would have been, and there's several other differences to include movement, etc. But it is capturing that look of that watch from the Jaws movie. I'll briefly remove the strap here just to show you the case back. I'm using a sort of NATO style strap here. On the back, you have Resco with the trident, and then Hooper with the serial number. And then around the screw down back, it says USA. Get this where you can read it. I hope 316L, MH417, Swiss movement, 20 atmospheres, built, tested, Coronado, USA. Okay, so pretty cool. The strap that I'm running on this, and you can actually see I've really been wearing this watch. This is sweat and sawdust, and here sweat and sawdust and everything else, where I've been wearing this watch a lot. The strap is actually from Countycom. It's just a pretty basic NATO strap. It has titanium hardware, so it's very lightweight. I'll go ahead and put the watch on, show you what it looks like on wrist. This is the style of strap that I prefer for most of my watches. It pretty much stays that way, and the strap stays out of the way. And you can see I do wear it pretty low. I'm right onto the back of my hand with it. That's where I like to wear this watch. And I get full wrist articulation without any discomfort. You know, it doesn't protrude off the wrist a lot. It doesn't sit very high, in my opinion. When I bend my wrist, it sort of makes it look like it does. But when you're holding your wrist in a natural way, it sits very low. Some of the larger watches I have, I find myself, hitting things with my arm when I walk past, the side of a car, the edge of a doorway, etc. That doesn't really happen with this watch, because you can see it sort of sits below my knuckle line. So unless you're going around banging your knuckles on things, and if you're dragging your knuckles, we need to have a different discussion. But yeah, unless you're walking around banging your knuckles as you walk, you probably won't have an issue with this watch sitting too high on the wrist and banging around as you're moving. So it does wear very nicely. As far as the philosophy of use on this watch, I would say this is an everyday quality watch. I have a lot of watches, and I just keep grabbing this one. I keep putting this one on. I've been wearing it almost every day for 3 or 4 months now. I just love the look of it. It's slightly retro. It's very unique. It says Resco 25 joules, super automatic, 200 meters, 660 feet here in the face. And I just love everything about it. I love that it has hash marks for every single minute on the timing bezel. I love the color contrast between the body of the watch and the face, between the first 15 minutes of time and the following 45. I will attempt to show you the Loom. This is not a completely darkened room, but I can at least attempt to show you what the Loom looks like. And you can see, even in a room that's actually not very dark, how good the Loom is here. So yeah, it's a great everyday watch. It has a very unique semi-retro face to it. Yeah, I just enjoy looking at it. I enjoy wearing it. It tells great time. Has a very legible hands. Very easy to tell what you're looking at. There's a bit of a polish on one side of the hand and a sort of matte finish on the other half of the hand. You can sort of catch that in the camera there. That just makes for a high contrast hand. It makes it easy to read. The amount of Loom inside each hand, including the second hand, makes it very legible in the dark. So yeah, it's just a watch, and a good everyday watch. I'll go so far as to call it a tool watch. And then I'll add this. I'll say this is a watch that you wear for your enjoyment. This is not a watch necessarily to show off to other people or anything. No, this isn't a Rolex or an Omega or anything like that. The quality is there. This has the same quality as those watches, but it's not shouting it in the brand name, which I kind of like. People who know watches will see this and ask, hey, what is that? And you can tell them a little bit about it. They may or may not be impressed, but you know what you have, and it's a very quality movement. ETA 2824 self-winding mechanism. Probably should have mentioned that earlier in the review. Inside an American-made case. And this is, a watch where you're just not going to see thousands and thousands of these made. Resco tends to make a certain number of a model and then stop making that model, in my experience with the brand. So what you have is something that's really unique, and I do wear my watches. This one, like I said, has been worn for almost daily for 3 or 4 months now, and it's really not showing a lot of wear other than on the strap. And one day, this is a watch I'll be proud to hand down to my son, and it'll have a lot of wear and tear on it, and it'll still be keeping good time. So this is an everyday watch philosophy of use for your enjoyment, not others. As far as performance in that philosophy of use, I'll say the watch keeps great time. You can hand wind it when you first put it on if you haven't been wearing it. But I've found that it does keep time accurately for about 24 hours from the time when you take it off. Maybe a little bit longer, maybe as much as 30 hours from the time I take it off before it seems to truly run down. I can't be exact on that because I haven't sat there and watched it run down, but I've seen it still ticking the next morning. And then if I don't wear it that day, sometime that day it usually ticks itself out. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 to 30 hours of runtime just from wrist movement. As I mentioned, it does have a screw down crown with the steel trident on there. And that's a nice touch that works well. Very simple operation, simply unscrew. And as soon as it pops loose, I'll actually show you. I'll unscrew this and you hopefully can see it pop on the video. Oh, there it popped. And now if you wind it away from you, you're actually winding the movement. It's actually pretty tight right now because I have been wearing this watch today. And if you pull it out to the first detent, you can adjust the date, which I don't want to do because this watch is actually accurate right now. And then if you pull it to the second click, you can adjust the time, and that does stop the second hand. Okay, then you just gently press back in, and with a gentle pressure, you just rotate it away from you as you tighten it, and as you can see, it immediately caught the threads, and I'm just snugging it to the O-rings now. Very easy to operate that screw down crown. I've had some that were finicky, including from Resco, actually. But this Hooper has not given me any issues at all with the screw down crown. Ergonomics, we talked about that a little bit already. It's very comfortable. It doesn't disappear on your wrist, but it isn't banging into stuff either. This crown doesn't dig in. There's a little bit of case back behind the crown, keeps that from happening. And the watch overall sits low on the wrist. As far as cost and value, this watch is going to come on a very similar NATO strap to the one that I have on it, and list at $13.05 US. Okay, and it'll show up at your door in 2 days. If memory serves, that price does include shipping and I believe tax as well, depending on what state you live in. But double check me on the tax. But yeah, it shows up in a couple of days. The Resco is great to work with. They will occasionally have a bit of a price reduction on some models. If it was a show model or something of that nature, it's always worth an email or a call to the Resco team if you're interested in a particular model, and just say what you're looking for and ask if they have anything that is perhaps a used or a trade-in or something of that nature. You might save a little money on this. Also, if you buy from Resco at a show, I have seen Resco have show prices before. I think I paid right at $1,000 for this one. I think I paid right at $1,100 for the RTAC GMT here. And I believe for what you get, the exclusivity of the brand, the build quality, the movements that are selected, you are getting great value for your money if you are a watch guy. There's always people out there that will say, and they're right, hey, a Casio keeps the same time, and it does. Just like I can drive back and forth to work in a Shelby Cobra or in a Nissan Versa, right? They both get the job done, but one does it in a way that's a little bit more visceral, connects with you in a way that other things may not. And I think Resco connects like some of the other higher end watch brands do, without necessarily gouging you for the quality that you're getting. So 1305 list, you may find availability on this watch for closer to the $1,000 mark if you shop around, if you reach out to Resco and just see what they have available. And overall, I'd say this is just as good as some much more expensive watches I've had. Overall, I recommend this watch. I love the Swiss heritage in the movement with the exclusivity of being American built and in small quantities. Thank you for your time. I hope you will consider the Resco brand when you think about your next quality watch. Resco doesn't, obviously pay me for this, or they did not know that I would be doing a review on this watch when I bought it. But their customer service is outstanding. Their product is outstanding. And I love to see people support American companies, and especially American companies founded by veterans. So check out Resco, check out the Hooper. They have a lot of other good models as well. And thank you for watching the review. If you have any questions or follow-ups, please leave those in the comments below. And with that, I'm out.